You might not know that I'm a survivor of Hodgkin's lymphoma, and according to the medical definition, I'm actually not technically a survivor still. I still haven't gone 5 years cancer-free, but I've been told 3 separate times that I'm cancer-free by my doctor. So when I was originally diagnosed in 2003, I didn't know what the warning signs were. I didn't know what the symptoms were. And that's one thing I really want to emphasize to you guys is, take the time to learn about, what the warning signs and symptoms are, because I was lucky, actually. Hodgkin's is one of the more treatable diseases, and it has a very high success rate of being cured. And so I was very fortunate in that aspect. But I was diagnosed late, and that was because I didn't put together all these symptoms. And they can be so random, and they're different for each type of leukemia or lymphoma, but they can be as simple as bruising, unexplained bruising that doesn't go away. In my situation, I was losing a little bit of weight, I was fatigued, but I was working 2 jobs, so I thought, well, I need to scale it back a little bit. I had itchy skin. Again, I thought maybe I need moisturizer on my legs. And then I started to get random night sweats. And it wasn't every night, but every couple of weeks or so. And at that point, I started to get a little concerned. I started looking on the internet, and at that point, cancer was not on my radar. And based on my research, I figured out, well, I either had AIDS or menopause. And I knew for sure it wasn't menopause. But I honestly, you guys, I thought I had AIDS. And, that's despite the fact that I had a sizable lump growing on my neck. So, I was lucky. Again, I got diagnosed very quickly, started treatment very quickly, went through about 6 months of ABVD chemotherapy. That's a chemo cocktail of 4 fun drugs that are incredibly hard. And I can remember towards the end of my treatment thinking, how could a young child, or how could my mom or my grandparents go through this? Because I was a young, healthy adult, and it took everything I had just to get through that 6 months of treatment. After that, I was declared cancer-free. I was living life. Daisha and I, my wife now, decided to do all kinds of crazy stuff in that time, get married, have children, you name it. And so when our son, he was 4 months old when I had my first recurrence. And at that time, I decided that I was going to participate in a clinical trial here at St. Luke's for a tandem or a double autologous stem cell transplant using my own stem cells. And I felt that when I went through the treatment for ABVD, I knew that somebody else had come before me. Somebody else had gone through a clinical trial to make that treatment possible for me. And so I felt a very strong obligation to give back, and maybe this clinical trial will work, maybe it won't, but hopefully somebody else can benefit from this experience. And in my situation, it was very rough, even harder than the original treatment that I had previously, and it was very hard. It's still hard for me to look at pictures of myself during that time period. And roughly about 6 months after I was declared cancer-free, again, I had another recurrence, a small spot in my chest. And so at that point, my doctor recommended I go down to Salt Lake for a consultation on a bone marrow transplant, and that's what we did. And going there was a little disconcerting. It was like walking into the hospital in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It was really creepy. And the doctor who came in told me that I had a 0% chance of living a year after treatment. And I was like, what do you mean? You basically are telling me that you're going to kill me with this chemotherapy? And she said yes. And I was just devastated at that point. And, went home, decided I needed to regroup, take a look at things again, and did some more research. Found out that the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, they do the most number of transplants in the world. So we decided to go there for a second consultation. And so, second opinions are so incredibly valuable. Knowing what the warning signs are so incredibly valuable. And in going to Seattle, they tailored it to me. They gave me 3 different options for a bone marrow transplant, kind of a small, medium, and large. And I decided to go with the medium transplant. It was a mini bone marrow transplant with my mom as my donor. And again, it was a clinical trial, and I think I'm very confident that it's going to save thousands of lives one day because it opens up that donor pool so a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister can be a donor. And so it's just incredible, the advancements that are taking place, and it's not headline news. Unless you know somebody, you don't hear about these things taking place. And, after the bone marrow transplant, I was riding high, was in remission for about 2.5 years before I had another recurrence towards the end of 2009. And at that point, when you go for a bone marrow transplant, you kind of realize this is pretty much the last tool in the box. There aren't too many choices after you recur from a bone marrow transplant. And so what I wanted to do today was to thank all of you for giving us hope. Hope that there will be a drug out there when something goes on. That was what happened in my situation. I was fortunate enough that my transplant doctor was in communication with another research doctor there at the same facility, and that he was working on a targeted therapy specific to Hodgkin's lymphoma that targets the CD30 receptor. And so I was able to take this chemotherapy, but I didn't lose my hair. I didn't get sick. I didn't have to think about, my son interacting with other kids and bringing home a cold and all those kinds of things. And so it's just a huge relief to know that these advancements are taking place, and that you guys are providing that hope, not just for me, but for the people that you've heard from today, and for the thousands, the tens of thousands of people in our country and around the world who are suffering from these various afflictions. And so you guys really are providing that hope. You're providing life to people all across the world. And so you heard Gleevec, Rituxan. Susan mentioned, another thing that she was pursuing, and it's just, these targeted therapies are really where a lot of the homework is being done right now. There's so much money being invested in these targeted therapies that allow somebody to live their life, to take a pill, and to cherish all of these moments. And to echo what Honoree said, thank you for the butterflies in all of those moments, like she said, because without your guys' fundraising, without your guys' dedication and devotion to our mission to find a cure for blood cancers, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have had all of those years with my son, who is now 5 years old. And I'm just so incredibly grateful for each and every one of those moments. And like Honoree said, it's funny, you have a whole new appreciation for trees and for doing chores, you name it. And so it's really incredible the perspective that it gives you. And you guys are just so incredible for having, the dedication not only to yourselves, but to this greater cause. There's so many folks out there who, are content to just complain. You guys are doing something. You guys are doing something that is changing the world, and it's true. And I know that sounds a little cliche, but it really is true. And things like Gleevec and Rituxan, Sprycel, Tasigna, the drug that I'm on, it's just called SGN35 right now. It's amazing what is going on, and I just thank you so much for providing us with the hope that there will be a cure for us in our lifetimes, and that they will change what they have been doing in treating people with these harsh chemotherapies and radiations. And so I again wanted to thank our honored speakers today for having the courage to share their stories with each of us here today. And I want each and every one of you to hold on to these stories throughout the season, and I want you to share these voices. I want you to share the stories that you've heard today, because when you look around, there's roughly 50, 60 people on our current team right now, and you guys are making such a huge difference, not only in our community, but around the country and around the world. And so it's just amazing. I want each and every one of you to be incredibly proud of what you're doing, because it really is incredible. And so please, share these stories. Let people know what you're working so hard for, and why you're working so hard to fundraise, why you're harassing them over and over and over